The scene transitions to the Empire where Lord Marcus wakes up, disoriented and unsure of what has happened. Margaret stands nearby, and he immediately asks her about the situation. She explains that he and Ravi have been unconscious for 2 days, expressing concern. Holger, one of his loyal servants, enters the room, visibly relieved to see him awake. However, Marcus's concern lies elsewhere. He quickly inquires about the others, prompting Holger to reveal that 12 soldiers and Sir Roten have not returned. Marcus then asks about the mage, wanting to speak with him. Holger steps outside in search of Ian, and finds him standing alone. Ian, already aware of Marcus's recovery, listens silently as Holger expresses gratitude for his efforts in saving the Lord. Holger relays Marcus's urgent request for a meeting. Ian nods silently and follows him inside. As they enter, they cross paths with the Lord and Ravi in the corridor, both fully dressed and alert. Marcus greets Ian warmly, asking about his well-being. Ian, in turn, asks how he feels. Marcus assures him that he is much better, crediting everyone's care and efforts. He expresses deep gratitude, thanking Ian profusely for securing the Moglian family's future and the estate's foundation. Reflecting on recent events, he considers the significance of Ian's contributions. Having wiped out the goblins in the Moglian Mountains and protected the estate, Ian's efforts cannot go unrecognized. As the Grand Lord of the Empire, Marcus knows the importance of rewarding such loyalty and bravery. After deliberating, he informs Ian that he has chosen a gift to honor his service. Handing him a box, Marcus encourages Ian to open it. Ian's eyes widen as he sees the ring he had borrowed from Margaret. Before he can speak, Marcus calmly explains that he already knew about it. He adds that they thought of it as an old family heirloom, and doesn't fully understand its true power. Curious, he asks if it holds any special benefits for mages. Ian hesitates, but eventually admits that it amplifies his mana and was crucial during the canyon battle. Hearing this, Marcus immediately recognizes how valuable it is. Without hesitation, he tells Ian that the ring is now his and urges him to accept it as a token of gratitude. Ian stands in disbelief, unprepared for such a gesture. The weight of the ring's significance isn't lost on him, but Marcus speaks as if it's a simple gift. Marcus raises his voice to make a formal announcement. Ian will now be the Moglian family's honored guest for eternity. The title, Marcus explains, represents their eternal promise and asks if Ian will accept it along with the ring. The promise is no mere formality. It's a binding contract, recognized across the Empire's nobility, lasting 1,000 years. Marcus assures Ian that the family will always welcome him and provide aid whenever he needs it. To seal the promise, he and Ravi swear upon the northern stream of the Emerald River. Both lower their heads, their pledge extending far beyond the present. Ian, moved by the sincerity in their words and actions, accepts. The next day, Ian and the knights are traveling toward their destination. As they reach a certain point, he turns to the captain and asks how far they are from Lloyd. The captain assures him that they are close, explaining that the town will be visible once they cross the hill ahead. During the journey, Ian's thoughts drift to his conversation with the king about the gift. He inquired about an alchemist on the estate capable of crafting elixirs. Marcus had mentioned an alchemist named Ridio, living in Lloyd. According to him, Ridio and other alchemists had originally come from the capital but relocated north in search of a rare herb found in the region. Though Ian doesn't recall the name Ridio from his past life, the mention of elixirs piqued his curiosity, especially one that might restore his depleted mana. As he and the captain continue talking, one of the knights suddenly points toward the horizon. The knight exclaims that the town is visible from their vantage point. All eyes turn to where the knight is pointing. Smoke rises above the rooftops and distant shouts echo, freezing them in place. Meanwhile, the gangsters move through the town, their blood-covered daggers glinting in the light. Their leader, a towering figure with a cold demeanor, barks orders to regroup. He tells them to hurry, urging the group to head to Coldwood without delay. Amid the chaos, a small boy, Douglas, scrambles through the wreckage, desperate to reach his father. The man, bound and bleeding, can do nothing but watch helplessly as the gangsters toy with him. Despite his injuries, he shouts for his son to run, his voice breaking with fear and desperation. The gangsters pay no mind to the boy's cries. One of them plunges a dagger into the father, leaving Douglas screaming for him. Another one seizes the boy, his grip tight as he sneers. The leader approaches him, dagger in hand, a sinister smile on his face. With chilling calmness, he promises the father that his son will be sold to a nice place, delivering the final blow as he drives the dagger into the man's chest. Douglas watches in paralyzed horror, his small frame trembling as the life leaves his father's eyes. The brutal scene unfolds before him, each moment etched into his memory. Suddenly, a frost spreads, encasing the ground and creeping toward the gangsters. They look around in confusion, their eyes darting for the source. One of them points frantically toward Ian and the knights, shouting a warning. Their leader reacts immediately, barking an order to retreat. In an instant, they all scatter, fleeing in all directions, their bravado replaced by terror. Ian watches them go, his gaze calm yet piercing. The frost fades as he lowers his hand, the ring on his finger glowing faintly. The spell worked flawlessly. A surge of power courses through him. The ring has amplified his mana to rival a third-class magician's strength, a fact he notes with quiet satisfaction. With the danger gone, villagers emerge from hiding, rushing to check on their loved ones. Cries of anguish fill the air as they find family members lying motionless. Ian turns to the captain, his expression steady but concerned. He asks if the knights suffered any injuries. The captain shakes his head, assuring him that everyone is unharmed. Despite the reassurance, Ian's thoughts shift to the alchemists, hoping he survived. A rising commotion catches his attention. Villagers shout Ridio's name, calling out in desperation. Ian stiffens at the mention of the name and quickly pieces things together. Ian approaches and kneels, his voice soft but firm. He gently asks the kid to step aside so he can tend to his father. Ian moves closer, his breath catching as he examines Ridio. There's no blood on the alchemist's body, but his complexion is unnaturally pale, and streaks of white mar his hair. Ian's eyes narrow as the realization strikes. This is mana poisoning. His mind races, recalling the symptoms and the urgency of treatment. There is a disease known as God's curse, a cruel affliction that ravages those who have a mana brain but lack a mana heart. When too much mana enters the body, it overloads the brain, causing unrelenting pain that never ceases. Ian examines Ridio's symptoms carefully and quickly deduces that the alchemist couldn't have injected mana into himself. The painful truth becomes clear. Someone, likely one of the magicians, must have intentionally caused this condition. After assessing Ridio's critical state, Ian realizes the situation is dire. The only way to temporarily alleviate the pain is to inject pure mana and help release the excess that's trapped inside. Ian gently checks Ridio's forehead and observes his reaction, then turns to the people around him. He instructs them to tend to Ridio's wounds, his voice calm but firm. The man carrying Ridio expresses his gratitude, thanking Ian for his help. As Ian begins to turn away, he feels a tug on his cloak. He looks down to find Douglas, the boy's eyes wide with worry. Douglas asks about his father, seeking reassurance. Ian pauses, weighing his words carefully. He knows that the relief he's given Ridio is only temporary. Injecting mana might ease the pain for a time, but for God's curse, there is no cure. The leftover mana he has injected will remain in Ridio's body, offering only a brief respite. The man will soon face an agonizing decision: continue injecting mana to suppress the pain or die. Ian sighs inwardly, the weight of the situation heavy on his shoulders. Douglas, determined to save his father, dashes away to find a herb, ignoring the man's calls. As the shouts grow faint, Ian's mind drifts back to the name from his past life. Douglas Harmon, the greatest alchemist in history. Once poor, he had risen to prominence as a trusted figure by Emperor Ragnar's side, revered for his genius. Ian recalls Douglas' deep resentment toward magicians. Ian's thoughts shift to the Landier's flower, the rare herb Douglas seeks. Though it can neutralize mana, it's also a poison that affects the blood, and he realizes Douglas might not be aware of the risks. The danger of the flower lingers in his mind. Ian catches up with Douglas, who refuses to turn back. Knowing the forest ahead is fraught with danger, Ian casts a spell to put the boy to sleep. He gently lays Douglas on the ground, ensuring his safety for now. Though it's a difficult choice, Ian knows it's the only way to prevent him from rushing into harm's way. As he watches the boy sleep, Ian reflects on the events that have unfolded. Without him, Ridio would be dead, and Douglas would have been captured by the gangsters. His thoughts wander to the poison from his past life, and he begins to suspect it was created by Douglas under Ragnar's orders. The realization unsettles him. Ian feels conflicted. He briefly entertains the thought of disposing of Douglas, fearing the potential danger the boy might pose in the future. But he knows acting hastily could be disastrous. Douglas possesses extraordinary talent, the potential to become the greatest alchemist ever. Ian considers recruiting him for his cause but fears Douglas might eventually betray him. The boy's brilliance is a double-edged sword. Just then, the captain arrives, having noticed Ian's departure, and follows him. Upon seeing Douglas asleep on the ground, the captain asks what happened. Ian explains that he put Douglas to sleep to prevent him from acting recklessly. He then asks the captain to help carry the boy back to the village. The captain agrees but observes Ian's hesitation, sensing something is off. Ian, still torn, decides not to return with him. "I have somewhere else to go," he says, leaving the matter of Douglas unresolved for now. One night, Ridio watches over Douglas, who still lies awake in bed. Ridio, now feeling better, reflects on a conversation he had with Barton about the magician who saved them and Douglas's reckless actions. Douglas, restless, explains that he is only trying to find the flower, but Ridio insists it is foolish to venture out with raiders around. Tension rises as Douglas argues he has no choice. His father's suffering leaves him desperate. Ridio, however, claims to feel fine now, needing only Landier's flower. Douglas, bitter and doubtful, has lost faith in its existence after a year's search. As their argument intensifies, a voice suddenly interrupts, claiming that the flower does exist. Both of them freeze, uncertain of the speaker's identity. Ridio cautiously moves to the door and asks who it is. The voice responds, revealing knowledge of their search. Ridio opens the door, and Ian steps inside, his cloak now removed to reveal his face. Douglas immediately recognizes him and shouts in alarm, realizing that he is the mage from earlier. Ridio, still stunned, processes the unexpected turn of events. Ian enters the room and calmly introduces himself. He places an object on the table, drawing Ridio's curiosity. With a deliberate motion, he taps the object, causing it to glow and reveal a delicate flower inside. Ian announces that it is Landier's flower and that he intends to give it to Ridio. However, before doing so, he pauses, his expression serious. He asks how Ridio knew about the flower since its effects are not widely known. Ridio opens the journal his father had given him and points to the page where he discovered the remedy for mana poisoning. He begins reading aloud, describing Landier's flower's unique properties. It neutralizes mana, can only be found in the northern parts of the continent, and has 12 petals. He continues, explaining that its stem and roots contain poison and that the flower dries up immediately after being picked, making it impossible to cultivate. Ian listens carefully as he flips through the journal's pages. Then he asks if Ridio's father had studied alchemy. He nods, confirming that alchemy had been a family business. Ian pauses before explaining that for a magician with both a mana heart and a mana brain, the flower's ability to neutralize mana could be fatal. Ridio responds with certainty, assuring Ian that he understands the risks but insists his family's alchemist would never create something dangerous. His confidence is unwavering to the point that he declares he would bet his family name, Harmon, on it. Meanwhile, Douglas remains silent, his emotions unreadable as he watches the exchange. Ian thanks Ridio for answering his question before taking Landier's flower from the ice crystal where he had preserved it. He explains that freezing was necessary to maintain the delicate flower's shape. Ridio's disappointment is clear as he asks if Ian has tricked him. Ian reassures him, stating that his only goal is to prove that Landier's flower can always be found when needed. Ian shifts the conversation, asking Ridio if he would be willing to make a trade. Ridio, initially confused, asks for clarification. Ian explains that he would inject mana into his regularly to prevent him from succumbing to mana poisoning. In addition, he promises to help Ridio find a way to use Landier's flower. He muses confidence that he can uncover the necessary information, including what Ragnar and Douglas may have gathered about the flower. Ian urges Ridio to come with him to the capital, where he can offer further assistance. Ridio, still uncertain, asks Ian for more details about what he would be doing in the capital. Ian clearly states his request. He wants Ridio to create mana elixirs to restore his own deficient mana. Ridio hesitates, suggesting Ian should seek a famous alchemist instead, as he believes he's not yet an extraordinary one. But Ian stands firm, insisting that he needs someone who will stay with him and provide a consistent supply of elixirs. He reminds Ridio of Douglas's desire to venture into the forest to find a remedy for his father. Ian urges Ridio to make the right choice, especially for his son's sake. He knows that Douglas is not a typical child and that he can't let him lose his father or fall into the hands of someone like Ragnar. Ridio asks for time to consider the offer. Ian agrees, giving him as much time as he needs. The next day, the captain approaches Ian and informs him that they must return to the Lord's castle. Ian stays silent for a moment, then agrees, though his thoughts linger on Ridio, wondering if a decision has been made. As Ian prepares to leave, Ridio and Douglas appear, calling him back. He turns to them and asks if Ridio has made a decision. Ridio nods, saying he has no choice but to live, and agrees with Ian's suggestion. However, he urges Ian to keep the promises made. Ian reassures him that he will. Douglas hesitates, asking if Ian is certain he can heal his father. The reply is firm, but doubt lingers as he asks again. This time, the unwavering confidence in the answer calms his fears, replacing uncertainty with relief and happiness. For the first time, he begins to see Ian as his boss. Ian is surprised by how quickly Douglas accepted him, wondering if he was always like this in his past life. Just then, a knight on horseback arrives with urgent news. The knight tells Ian that they must head to the castle immediately. Ian asks what's going on, and the knight replies that the prince has crossed the Gamus River. Shocked, Ian wonders how the prince crossed so quickly. The knight explains that the news came that morning. Ian is puzzled and uneasy, questioning why the knights are reporting it now. Ian asks the knight for a favor, to borrow his horse. The knight raises an eyebrow and asks if Ian knows how to ride. Ian admits he doesn't, but he's confident the horse will become his friend. He steps closer to the horse, placing a hand on its head, and focuses his energy to cast a spell to tame it. He tells the horse he's heading to the castle and asks if it will take him there. Without hesitation, the horse sits down, ready for him to ride. Grateful, Ian hops on easily. Turning to the knight, who watches in surprise, he asks Arnold to bring Ridio along, as he plans to leave first. With that, Ian spurs the horse into motion, heading toward the castle. The prince leaves the castle in his carriage. He recalls his father calling him over. Lord Terry informs the prince that Herbert has been meeting with the fifth prince, which catches the prince's attention. He explains that many nobles are aligning themselves with the ivory tower, and the prince should understand that the allegiance of its owner will be crucial. Lord suspects the owner is planning to side with the fifth prince, which could have significant consequences. Lord Terry advises his son to watch out for the cunning fifth prince, Ragnar, who he believes is as smart as they come. Terry is certain Ragnar will try to manipulate Herbert into building an army of followers. Acting fast, he tells his son to win over Ian before the ivory tower gets their hands on him. Back to the present, the prince sighs deeply. Sure, Ian is a magician, but what good is he when surrounded by self-serving sorcerers at the ivory tower? Frustrated, the prince becomes angry, questioning why the ivory tower would choose Ragnar over him as the heir. He vows to eliminate anyone who stands in his way when he becomes king, including those who have betrayed him. His anger simmers as he swears they will regret their choices. His planning is interrupted when Oliver Raywood, the captain of the Second Palace, offers some advice. He suggests informing the Moglians of their arrival first to allow them time to prepare. However, the prince dismisses Oliver's suggestion, unwilling to listen to reason. Instead, he changes the subject, avoiding the issue. Oliver, not one to back down easily, insists they must give the Moglians time to prepare for his arrival, urging the prince to think carefully about their situation. Oliver's way of speaking makes the prince wonder if his family has connections to the northern Moglian lords. Turning to the captain, the prince asks how much longer it will take to reach their destination. The captain responds that it will take another 2 days. The prince thinks for a moment and decides that 2 days will be sufficient. He instructs the captain to send a message to the Moglians, informing them of their arrival. The prince is eager to see how the Guardians of the North, along with the Empire's shield, will prepare for the arrival of royalty in such a short time. He sees it as a challenge he's eager to witness. Although Oliver isn't entirely comfortable with the prince's decision, he has no choice but to agree. At Lord Marcus's castle, preparations are in full swing as the servants meticulously clean every corner of the estate, ensuring that not a speck of dust or disorder is left. The Lord, though hasn't yet received word from the prince, is determined to be ready for his arrival. He assumes that the prince and his entourage are still on their way. Other noble families have already arrived, but the Miffardens and Raywoods have yet to show up. Eventually news comes that they will be arriving shortly, though they have yet to make their appearance. The Lord, anxious about the proceedings, asks Hogger about Ian's arrival. However, he reports in negative, which only adds to the Lord's growing frustration, but he still decides to head outside. Soon, the knights announce the arrival of the crown prince. The nobles have already begun to gather, and there's a palpable buzz in the air as the prince approaches. Not long after, Ian finally arrives at the castle. He greets Lord Marcus and apologizes for his late arrival. Lord, though relieved, reassures him that his tardiness doesn't matter now that he is finally here. Ian steps beside the king, stunning the nobles. Whispers spread as they question how someone so young gained such power and influence. Lord informs Ian that, per royal summons, he must be present at the highest standing, as per the Empire's laws. The Crown Prince immediately recognizes Ian. He asks if Ian is the famous magician everyone speaks of. Ian, distracted by a woman in the crowd, notices Cecilia. He recognizes her as a spy from the Coldwood Empire, though he keeps his thoughts to himself. Later inside, Oliver notices the prince's growing discomfort. He leans in, advising the prince not to overindulge in the wine, fearing it could attract unwanted attention. The prince scoffs at mingling with nobles from other empires, expressing displeasure about the banquet and the wine. He longs to return to his own empire. Meanwhile, Cecilia, the spy, watches Ian from the shadows, observing him. Assigned by the Coldwood Empire to investigate Ian's abilities, she has been following him, driven by both orders and curiosity. Her mission is clear: observe Ian and, if possible, capture him and his mother to return to the Empire. As she watches Ian, she decides to test the rumors herself. She conjures a magic missile, aiming it at Ian. The spell is swift and precise, but Ian surprises her. Without glancing in her direction, he raises his hand. A shield of magic materializes before him, effortlessly deflecting the bolt. The missile dissipates harmlessly, and Cecilia stands still. Aware of her presence, Ian turns toward her. Quick as a flash, Cecilia confidently declares herself as an esteemed elder from the Ivory Tower, justifying the magical light as a friendly hello. Ian, unimpressed, skeptically probes why she chose to greet him with a magical light, though he saw right through her attempted attack. As she prepares her next move, Ian calls out her full name. She's stunned. How could he know her name? They've never interacted before. The shock is evident on Cecilia's face as she stands frozen. With disbelief in her voice, she asks Ian how he knew who she was. Ian, calm and collected, answers without turning around. He casually mentions that he wiped out every Coldwalker, covert agents from the Coldwood Empire, who had infiltrated the Empire in his past life. The implication is chilling, but Ian continues. He asks if Cecilia wants him to list other names as well, naming Coldwalkers who once served in the shadows, now erased from existence. With each name, Cecilia's anger builds, the names stirring a deep, boiling rage within her. Fury surges in Cecilia's chest, and she realizes that this encounter isn't going as planned. Without hesitation, she casts fire magic, sending a torrent of flames directly at Ian, determined to make him pay for his audacity and for revealing secrets she thought buried in time. But Ian is prepared. Swift and calculated, he raises his hand, a magical aura forming around him.